Welcome to the e-commerce growth show, brought to you by Segmentify.
Hello everyone, welcome to the e-commerce growth show. I'm Phil Kay, and in this episode I'm chatting to a guy called Tim Willis. Tim is he's head of e-commerce Southwest for the well-known agency PushON, run by Simon Wharton, as you probably know. But he joined there in January, and he's got over 11 years in experience in e-commerce within the agency world. So pretty experienced. I'm looking forward to chat to him a bit more today. And also he runs the sort of Southwest meetup for e-commerce experts, which is fantastic. It's called E-commerce Brains of Bristol. And I think there was one quite recently. So yeah, lots to have a chat about. Hey Tim, how are you doing?
Hi Phil, yeah, very well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. How's the continuing lockdown treating you?
It's good. I say it's good. It's okay. But we're near the end now, so
yeah,
it is what it is.
Yeah, completely. It's making the best of it, isn't it? You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I must admit, I am looking forward to getting out and about a little bit, hopefully, and doing a bit of the more face-to-face type stuff, that we're used to.
Yeah. There's been a lot of Zoom conversations and so forth over the last year or so. So yeah, it will definitely be nice to actually meet face to face soon.
Absolutely. So just as a bit of an icebreaker, really, why don't you tell the guys what attracted you to PushON? What was it about PushON that you wanted to go and join those guys?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, a number of things really. I mean, I first met Simon and a couple of the other guys a few years ago now at a Magento event.
Yeah.
Gone on really well with them. I think they're as an agency, I think they're very progressive, but they kind of share similar values to what I do in terms of being transparent and honest, and just generally good people to work with. So I think for me, from going from kind of running my own agency to then working under other people was I wasn't sure about it to start with, but it had to be the right fit, and I think the PushON guys and the team in general are just brilliant. And we're doing really well. We're a team of 39 at the moment. We've got offices in Manchester and Edinburgh and Bristol, which obviously I'm heading up. So yeah, it's a good company to be. We've got really good standard with Magento as well. Really strong clients on board. So I don't think I could have picked a better agency to work with, to be honest.
No, I must admit, I know Simon quite well. And I remember the first time I met the team, we went up from Bristol. And I remember straight away the first thing he did was put a bottle in my hand. And then we sat around the table, he gave me time as the as owner of the business with his team. He's very open with me and said, first of all, he said, look, we've got a relationship with Nosto, but I'm going to tell you that up front, but we're always open to talk to you, I was like, yeah, thank you very much. And then he said, look, he turned around to his team and said, make sure this guy has a good night. And they took me out, and we had a good time, and beers were paid for and stuff. And it was just one of those experiences where you think, they know how to make people feel valued. And that's obviously an important part of their value system as a business. So that was cool. So it's
completely agree. Simon loves a beer as well. So
yeah, he does. Yeah, he was going to be on today, wasn't he? But he's got a pitch to prepare for. So Simon, good luck with the pitch, my man. Anyway, so let's move on to the sort of the main theme of today. So first of all, I'll just ask you the kind of opening theme question around what have you seen in terms of the biggest e-commerce trends in the last 12 months from your perspective?
Sure. So I'd say it's probably brands that have moved towards a direct-to-consumer model.
Yeah.
So I don't know, in terms of D2C, it's obviously it's been around for a number of years now in terms of e-commerce strategy, but essentially it allows manufacturers and brands to sell directly to the consumer. So it basically bypasses the conventional method of negotiating with a a retailer or reseller to get your product to market.
Yeah.
And I think we've seen in terms of consumer behavior and purchasing decisions that we've seen over the last kind of year or two, I think they're going to become permanent. Many customer journeys will be placed online, even when physical retail scales back up later this year, hopefully.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, I've got a few questions around D2C. I'm not. I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means. We were talking earlier about how machine learning, typically it's very important to have a lot of products, often with the D2C offering, I don't know, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like Apple, or Eve Sleep or Casper or these kind of guys, or PG Tips or something like that, it's very difficult in terms of really offering value in terms of machine learning, because there isn't an awful lot of products going on, right? My sort of questions are around the strategy of it, right? So how, I get it with Apple, massive brand, so they're not going to dilute their kind of their market, if you like, and annoy, let's say for argument's sake, the reseller model, the distribution model. How in your experience, how does that work in terms of brands? Do some brands, can they get away with it because their brand is strong, or can anyone do it, or are there risks associated with doing it from that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, anyone can do it, and there are of course risks, and you are competing with the likes of Amazon as an example, that already have a massive customer following. But in terms of going to D2C and using something like Segmentify, it's still although the product SKU list may be slightly smaller, I think that depends on the business, but it is still all about personalization. It's about having more control over brand messaging, and that engagement with the customer, and that's where tools such as Segmentify can still come into play. Yes, it might not be particularly well suited for those businesses such as your Caspers, where maybe where the product amount is quite low, but there's still a lot of personalization within those types of services that could that would play its part in any D2C strategy.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I imagine if you move out of the kind of classic machine learning elements of product volume, you've still got segmentation, right? You've still got customers that'll be in different cohorts that you're going to want to target different messaging to, whether that be content blocks, full pages, etc. I get that. And then obviously there's the whole retention and communication strategy around push notification and email campaigns. So yeah, you're right. It's probably a different part of the Segmentify tool set if we're thinking about it out of the personalization box. We have had a few chats actually with D2C clients. I'm not sure whether we've signed any recently, but it's certainly been, like you say, it's increased in volume, if you like, over the last couple of years, I think, in terms of brands doing it. I mean, on that note, I mean, do you want to mention a few businesses in that space that have made that move that particularly stood out to you? Yeah,
sure. So I mean, probably one of the biggest D2C success stories is Gymshark, and they were valued at 1 billion last year. I think there's a couple of things they did. So obviously during lockdown, so when it was the height of lockdown, they, along with many other businesses, started to heavily invest in their interaction with their customers. So I think Gymshark renamed their social media channels to Homeshark, and they made basically use those as a hub of fitness content despite gyms being closed. So that was one example with Gymshark. And then we've got the likes of Heinz. So they actually launched their first D2C website over lockdown, and that basically encouraged people to sign up to their subscriptions of baked beans and other goods. And I think you'll find many other consumer packaged good companies are headed in that direction as well. And then one more example, and this is fairly relevant as it was Mother's Day recently, is Bloom and Wild. So they're Europe's largest and fastest growing D2C flower company. I don't know if you've used them yourself, but they've pretty much reinvented every aspect of flower, delivery and gifting, and they got the product right, which is the most, fundamentally the most important thing. But yeah, next year for Mother's Day, it's worth checking them out.
Yeah, no, totally, mate. I'm a bit poor on that front. Interesting though. I mean, you've totally blown my kind of theory out of the water straight away, to be honest. I mean, talk about Gym off the bat. And I mean, we've got Gym King as a customer, for example.
Okay.
Obviously, they're a massive player. They've got loads and loads of products, but they're D2C. So does that basically mean that Gymshark used to be a company that only sold through, I don't know, other retailers? And then they said, actually, no, we're going to go direct. So do they continue with the direct model as well as the distribution model, or do they cut off the distribution model and just go direct? What happens?
So as far as I'm aware, Gymshark was founded as a D2C, direct-to-consumer company. Then they may well distribute as well to other businesses, but fundamentally it's a D2C business at heart.
Okay, fine. So you're basically saying that these guys create their own products,
correct,
from scratch, and they sell it direct. So that means that there could well be lots and lots of brands that aren't going through that model but have a lot of products, basically. So I'm looking too narrow, right? I'm looking too narrow.
I think so. There's lots of brands like that aren't selling via resellers such as Amazon and so forth. And I think again, Heinz is a good example, and obviously their products are everywhere and obviously stocked in supermarket shelves, but they needed to especially when obviously it was a bit, in terms of going to the supermarket was a bit difficult. That's why they launched their first D2C website, just allowing customers to actually go to them directly and sign up to subscriptions rather than going to the supermarket or the local shop and buying a can of baked beans or whatever you tend to buy from Heinz.
Yeah, no, totally. No, that makes a lot more sense to me, actually, that this is a much wider field than I'm thinking of. So I mean, what about the benefits of D2C then? What when we're talking earlier about selling through a distribution channel versus or both, what are the benefits of doing it? I mean, you mentioned a couple there, but anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like the biggest benefit is that a business knows its product better than anyone else, so it puts them in the perfect position to be able to sell it. So there's a few things. So it allows for increased control over brand messaging and consumer engagement. Obviously, you've got direct access to customers and their data, which is vital, really, because that leads then onto things like personalisation and so on. Higher profit margins because you're not going through a third party. Stronger brand loyalty as well. And I think it's it's kind of already been highlighted, but I think it's worth mentioning that D2C e-commerce isn't just for startups that don't want things like legacy retail and big overheads. It's there for all brands, but specifically those brands that are looking to drive preference and loyalty and repeat sales.
Yeah, no, sure. And going back to that bit about the offset, if you like, between direct and channel or distribution or whatever you want to call that, obviously with Gymshark saying they are only going direct. So is there any compromise in terms of trying to run both models side by side? Do you take from one to get from the other in that sense, or how does that balance work, do you think?
Yeah, I think there's learnings to be had from whatever market or strategy you use at the moment. And it's not it's not, take Heinz as an example. They're not obviously just a D2C business. They're B2B. They sell to wholesalers and so forth. So it's the case with any of these kind of strategies. If one works, then look at the other one. Look at D2C and see whether there are gaps in the market. Whether you have an offering that you can truly feel like you can personalize. It will help in terms of brand loyalty. I think in terms of just being able to work with your customers smarter and get your messaging out there. So I think there's obviously overlap between all these kind of strategies.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I know I'm sort of going on about it, but it's just because, you know, like literally, I don't know how many years ago, 15 years ago, when Apple, 20 years, I don't know, right? I'm too old, man. But 20 years ago when Apple first started going direct, and I worked for an Apple, well, I worked for Digital Village, and they had an Apple division, if you like, tools and stuff. And I remember the upheaval that it caused, you know, like Apple are going direct. What? You know, they're screwing all their resellers and all their distribution channel, and, you know, we're going to lose out on all the sales and this, that, and the other. But of course, fast forward, and pretty quickly, I don't know whether one would argue that the two have worked, you know, like the way that Apple went direct actually helped those resellers in the end, or whether it was just balanced, or whether it was in favor of one or the other, you know, because like you said, the branding's blown up, absolutely massive. Does that then mean, a little bit like the Spotify effect, you know, that musician, okay, might have minuscule royalty now in terms of what it might have had 10 years ago, pre-Spotify, Napster, whatever, but now the reach is so massive that actually does it compensate, right? So I suppose it's that whole landscape maybe still.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Yeah, and, you know, with Apple, obviously there are lots of resellers, and yeah, I think they've got that model spot on. But yeah, I mean, generally, you know, the barriers to of entry are relatively low, but it's all about thinking about, again, who you're going to be competing with as well.
No, totally. I was going to say about the barriers, really. I mean, what's the ingredients for D2C? You know, like what do you need to do to become D2C? How do you then succeed? What are the things that get in the way of that whole picture of even contemplating D2C, let alone succeeding in it? What's your experience there?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, firstly, it's going to be dependent on who your competitors are. So yeah, as we said, you know, the barrier to entry is relatively low. But yeah, you could be competing with the likes of Amazon, who, you know, of course, already have quite an established customer following. I think you would also come to realize that without working with like a large retailer to support your brand, you do have to work harder on making your brand stand out.
Yeah.
And then obviously, you know, you're responsible for things like fulfillment, packaging, returns, and warehousing. Probably the biggest thing, and this is where, you know, an agency such as PushON can help, is building your online presence, because that's going to be difficult, and it requires a lot of dedication and a lot of focus on marketing.
Right.
And that's true obviously for any brand with an online presence, but I think even more so when you've got a presence just under your own name. So, you know, there is it's all, you know, of course, all feasible, but there's probably a lot of hard work, and a lot of that, I think, is going to be focused around, you know, business logistics, of course, but then, you know, marketing, getting your name out there, which, you know, isn't straightforward these days.
No, it's not, and that's one of my questions to you, really. I mean, coming not from that space, you know, just seeing brands, and you said, you know, putting a lot of work into brand presence. I mean, what kind of things are you talking about, coming from a layman's perspective? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, if it's, you know, if we're talking about a new brand, a new business, then, you know, you've got to obviously be in tune with your customers. So, you know, it's doing the homework in terms of understanding who your customers are.
Yeah.
You know, what their buying habits are, and then looking at what channels they're interacting with. So, you know, things like you may have seen recently, but there's a lot of businesses at the moment that are using the likes of TikTok.
Yeah.
So just looking, you know, if you're obviously a clothing business or something like that, then you're going to be, you know, you might be perhaps focusing on more of a younger audience, is then looking at what channels that audience uses. So, you know, likes of TikTok and Instagram and so forth, and then trying to initially build, you know, your presence around those channels, because you can enter that space relatively easily. You can keep costs down. Of course, you can also do paid advertising and so forth, but it gives you a bit more of a chance if you can start building up your social presence as a first step. I think from an online perspective as well, building your site up organically, in Google is obviously something that takes time. And if you've got a ton of competitors, then it's going to take even longer. Then you can do things like obviously just paid ads and paid advertising essentially, because although that might cost a fair amount of money per for acquiring customers, it does give you that data, that insight in terms of how customers are finding you, what channels are working. You can look at things like retargeting and so on. So it's a bit of a minefield, to be honest, but there are ways around it. I think ultimately it comes down to just forming that strategy and making sure everyone's on board with it.
So how much of that does PushON specialize in? Does it specialize in the whole journey of D2C, kind of PMO, if you like, or market fit, through to the actual tools to build that brand and the website and everything?
Pretty much. I mean, so when PushON was founded in 2005, and that was our kind of offering at the time, was very much marketing led. And then we did our first e-commerce website, I think around 2010, which is coincidentally when Magento was released, which is the platform that we use. And now, fast forward to today, it's very much that, like most agencies, you would like to think it's understanding business requirements, forming a strategy, working together to make it a success. And that obviously is part of that. You've got support of the client, you've got marketing, you've got design, UX, consultation, the whole package really. I guess with the team at PushON, we've got experts in all of those areas, which makes it quite easy for someone like myself to go in and have conversations with clients when I can confidently back it up with the talent and resource that we've got here.
Yeah, no, totally. You mentioned e-commerce platform. That's an interesting area. Obviously, there's been quite a lot of shifting in the landscape over the last year or so, maybe more. But like obviously, the intervention of Shopify into a lot of Magento agencies, BigCommerce. Have you done that as well? Have you diversified, or have you stayed true to Magento? And if so, why?
No, we haven't diversified. We've looked at Shopify, we've looked at BigCommerce. In terms of Magento, we've been a partner since 2010. We were one of the best performing partners last year. We believe in its worth. I think with the Adobe acquisition a few years ago, we're starting to see the real benefits in terms of the functionality, the features that Magento's now comes with. And there are, of course, there's always going to be cases where the client's, Magento is not the right fit for the client, and in which case, there might be, Shopify, for example, might be a good alternative. As you probably know, with Shopify, it's very straightforward for anybody to go in and set up a site. You can do it in probably 30 minutes if you wanted to. Whereas with Magento, you do need to work with an agency or somebody that's technically capable to deliver, a successful site. But I guess with Magento, you've got, there's so much functionality there, a lot around, obviously a lot around D2C, but things like B2B as an example, the suite of functionality it offers. It's by far a better offering compared to the likes of Shopify and Magento. Shopify and BigCommerce. It's they've all got their place, and as an agency, of course, we have to keep on top of these other platforms, and we'll see what happens in the future. But for now, we've got the support from Magento. They're a great team, and most importantly, we're seeing we're seeing the improvements. We're seeing client success stories as well. And if that continues to happen, then there's no real need for us to look at going elsewhere.
No, I mean, so when it comes to D2C, then is Magento then, in your opinion, the best platform to be using for it then?
Yeah, I mean, it offers a wealth of functionality to help you transition into direct to consumer selling. Yeah. So it'll give you obviously you can plug into Segmentify and other services, and it will just allow you to create engaging customer journeys, personalized shopping experiences, things like recommendations, abandoned baskets, helpful in terms of paid media retargeting. So it gives you all the tools that you could need in order to have a really solid website, progressive site as well, to help you grow and scale your business. So for me, it's a perfect platform. It's worth mentioning as well. So alongside Magento, we developed a product called Demand. So this is essentially like a package or an accelerator, as we call it, that allows a business to get to market quicker using Magento's native e-commerce functionality. So it just means you can be live with a website within a matter of weeks, essentially. So this came about towards the back end of last year. Especially whilst we were in the kind of the fun of full on lockdown and so on. Obviously, a lot of businesses that were maybe traditionally selling retail or on the high street, all of a sudden, lost their business. So we've you've probably seen tons of examples where they've had to go find a different avenue, and one of those avenues is obviously selling online. So the offering basically allows a business to tap into Magento's native functionality, of which it's a very rich ecosystem, and it just allows us to push something out in a relatively quick time frame and then build upon it. So it's good for that as well, because I think there's a misconception that Magento takes months and months to build, design and build and launch a site on Magento. That's not the case. I think we're seeing lots of businesses now turn to that kind of MVP, minimum viable product type approach to get there, and not just small businesses, big brands as well, to get an offer in online, test the waters, and enhance and build it upon it.
Yeah, no, that sounds very interesting. I mean, on that note, obviously we've talked about D2C, we've talked about platforms and accelerators and things like that, and some of the wider services that PushON provide. If anybody listening has resonated with this, with this stuff, and they'd like to contact you, whether they're thinking about D2C or they already are, but they're looking to improve on it or whatever it might be, what's the best way for the guys to get hold of you?
Sure. A few options. So obviously the website will contain more information on our services and so forth. So that's pushon.co.uk. You can email me directly, nice and simple, tim@pushon.co.uk. Myself and Simon, we're quite heavily involved in the LinkedIn community as well. So, worth tagging, added us in as a connection. But yeah, we'd love to have a chat to anyone that's interested in launching a D2C offering.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And obviously you run the meetups, right? Does Simon still run the Magento meetup in Manchester as well?
Yeah, he does. So we've got the Manchester ones. We've also got one in Edinburgh that's coming up in a few weeks' time. Cool. And the Bristol one we had last week. Obviously, these are all virtual. So I think for the Bristol one, we had people from from London, from Manchester. I think there was someone from Germany as well. So that's a nice thing about these meetups at the moment, is because they are all virtual. Anyone can attend. Obviously it'd be nice to get one face to face in Bristol. Realistically, that'll be, I guess, late summer, possibly, if everything's looking good.
Looking rosy.
We'll probably have a pint of rosy as well.
The Manchester meetup, the virtual Manchester meetup, is only for people in Manchester to attend.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no boundaries, right?
No, there isn't.
Brilliant, brilliant, cool. Well, just as a final sort of wrap up, Tim, I always like to put my speakers on the spot and ask them to delve into the history of their life and pluck out a golden nugget for all of our viewers to tell them something to go away with. What would you like to say?
I think for me, if you're looking to move into that D2C landscape, you've got to diversify your offering. And when I mean diversify your offering, it's about, as we discussed, kind of creating that unique and personalized brand experience to essentially give consumers a real reason to choose you. And obviously, if you need any help doing that, then speak to PushON.
Quality. Well, listen, thank you so much, Tim, for your time.
No problem.
No problem. And thanks, guys, for watching. I hope it's been useful to have a listen to what Tim had to say. So if you, all that remains for me to say is, if you haven't done so already, head over to segmentify.com/EGS, pick the UK growth show. As you know, we've got 4 or 5 around the world now. And sign up so you can get hold of all the future episodes, and obviously go back to Tim's if you want to have another listen or watch of it. And if you've got any questions or you want to be involved in any way, then as always, just ping me a line at phil@segmentify.com, and we'd be happy to have a chat about being involved in the show, or any topics you want us to research and find out about and interview people on. Then that'd be more than welcome. All right, but have a great rest of your day, evening, whenever you're watching / listening. And thank you again, Tim, for your time.
Thanks, Phil.
No worries. And we'll see you all again very soon.